Welcome to chapter 34. In this chapter, we are going to complete our systematic look at derivation in Mari with a look at verbal derivation. Before we get to that topic, however, we have one more grammatical point we want to look at, and that is another look at the clitic at, now linking clauses. We have already met at in many functions earlier ago that can mean also, and, etc., that I've compared it to Finnish kin and can, for example, or Hungarian ish, counterparts in many languages. In Mari, however, when we use it in combination with a whole clause, it has a special meaning, which means that we use it when we express that two events happened in immediate succession to one another, and we put it on the first element of this linking of clauses. Pashagic tolamat. I get back from work is pashagic tolam, and then tolamat, and I get back from work or so, chala ishtem, then I'll do everything. So what I'm actually saying here is that as soon as I get back from work, I'm going to do everything. If you are thinking, wait, haven't we looked at other grammatical constructions for the structuring, temporal structuring of events? Yes, we have. We have looked at meke, for example, but there is a difference between meke and at used in linking clauses. When we have meke, we are really talking about the subsequent actions. This happened and then that happened. After doing this, I did that. When we are using at, however, to link clauses, we are putting the stress on the immediate succession between events. As soon as one event happens, as soon as it's all finished, the next one will start. And so it's like in English, you would say like as soon as in translations of this structure. So yeah, that's a new way of linking clauses we have met here. Now we get to verbal derivation. Once again, we are going to be looking at different categories of verbal derivation or suffixes, and then we're going to look at all the representatives of these categories, most of which we have already met, but we're just making it a bit more systematic. The first group to perform an action involving, and this is the group of verbs that is so generic and abstract I couldn't even come up with a good name for it. It's basically we have a noun, a thing, and we want to verb this thing. In English, you might just do conversion. In such cases, you might just use the noun as a verb. Like if I take an English noun picture and I say picture the situation, I'm just verbing my noun. In Mari, you do generally need a derivational suffix to do this, and this suffix is L, second conjugation. If we have tam, a noun to taste, and we attach an L to it, we get tam lash, which means to taste. If we have ak, a price or a value, we attach this to it, we get ak lash, which means to assess, to grade, etc. And this derivational suffix is also used to integrate Russian verbs into Mari. That if I take Russian infinitives like organizirovat, to organize, and I want to turn this into a Mari verb, I just say organizirovat lash. I get rid of the palatalization of the infinitive ending in Russian. I stick my L to it, and I have a Mari verb that I can then inflect using Mari morphology. Translative verbs. Translative verbs are verbs denoting a transition into a state, becoming something. And we have met two very productive ones that are similar, but not identical in their meaning. The first one is ang, which ang you can consider basically the verbal counterpart to the adjectival derivational suffix an, which an was having something, like kyan was stony, having stone, and kyangash is well, actually, that's not the best example that came there. A better example would be V, the third, the best example is in the third line. V, force, power, strength. Vian would be strong. Viangash is to become strong, to become stronger, to take this this thing that is denoted. Oksa, money, oksan, having money, oksangash, to be money, to become rich, to come into money. Sheshke, daughter-in-law, Sheshkan, having a daughter-in-law, Sheshkangash, to be daughter-in-law to get yourself a daughter-in-law, i.e. your son gets married. So this is the productive, the widest productive meaning. Sometimes it is translative also in the sense that you become the thing denoted, like you become stone, you turn into stone, you don't get bestoned and get stoned to you. This is like there are some irregularities in what the exact function is, but the productive main function is taking up the thing, being supplied with the thing denoted by the base verb. Then lan, we have, I don't think we have met this one. This is less productive, where you should just learn the verbs that use it, where we have cher, illness, cherlanash, to fall ill. So we have a bunch of verbs here with not entirely transparent semantic relations to the base word, so just learn the individual words. The second highly productive suffix I mentioned that you can contrast to ang is m, also first conjugation, and it creates verbs that generally denote becoming the thing denoted by the base adjective usually. Osho is white. Oshemash is to become white. Nele is heavy. Nelemash is to grow heavy, or difficult also. Sai is good. Sayemash is to become good, to get better, to improve. U is new. Uemash is to be renewed, etc., etc. Then another one that is less productive, esht, where just use the verb, learn the verbs that use it. Kas, evening. Kasestash, to become evening. Schuldo, cheap. Schuldestash, to become cheaper. Yeah, and we're the final one we're looking at is g. This is very commonly used, but also not productive. Don't use it at home if you don't know if you don't know if you can attach this to a stem. Don't just use it in verbs that you know, where we have, like, for example, lavera, dirt, lavergash, to become dirty, umel, shade, umelgash, to grow dark, suser, wound, susergash, to be wounded. Sorry, so ang and m are highly productive. The other ones are less so. Next category, factative verbs. This is basically the transitive counterpart to transitive verbs, which is giving somebody something, turning somebody into something. And the first one we have is de, te, which we can in more ways than one see as the counterpart to the g that we see here. We have a lot of pairs where we have derived terms with g and one with t. Like we have susagash, to be wounded, susatash, to wound somebody, lavergash, to become dirty, lavertash, to make somebody dirty, to make something dirty. But yeah, some examples that we have: lum, name, lumdash, to name something; kill, connection, killdash, to connect; umel, shade, umeltash, to shade; kader, crooked, kadertash, to bend, to curve. We have discussed this one before. This one we can consider, it is not fully productive. You can't attach this to any any noun. It is productive in some de-verbal usages, but come to think of it, that's going to be in another point. We're going to come back to this suffix. Now we're just looking at this attached to nominal stems. Frequentative verbs. So this is a de-verbal, this is one of the sort of Aktionsart categories we're going to look at. These are de-verbal suffixes that where you attach it to a verb to add like some kind of aspect about the temporal structuring of the event to it. And frequentative means that you're doing something repeatedly. And we have met a bunch of suffixes that are all used fairly widely. And the differences between the suffixes, well, this is not a trivial question. But okay, so we have ishtash, to do, ishtalash, to do something repeatedly. Oftentimes you'll have a hard time translating these. You will have a hard time distinguishing between these in translation. I had a little hiccup in my camera picture. I hope that the recording is fine. So we have lumdash, to name, lumdelash, to name somebody repeatedly, and this has a different meaning then. I think in English, the difference between naming somebody and calling somebody names. Yeah, so it is naming, but over and over again. So this is in something not nice. You are teasing somebody, basically. Chongestash, to fly, chongestalash, to fly around, etc. Shindash, to put to place, shindalash, to arrange. We've also met ed, also fairly productive, but fairly. Koshtash to go, koshtedash to wander. So it can be that you're doing something repeatedly. It can be that you're doing something over a long time period with less directionality, less purpose. Liash to happen, liadash to happen, but specifically, like you'd use it when you talk about something that happens repeatedly, occasionally, or whatnot. Oh, such things happen, basically. Ujalash to sell, ujaledash to sell, but maybe like ujalash would be you're selling your car, and ujaledash would be you're selling apples. So you're doing way more transactions than just the one when you were selling the car. Puash to give, puedash to distribute. So like to give over and over again. We've also had kal, less productive, but also good to know. Kalasash to say, to speak, kalas kalash to talk, to tell. So basically saying things over and over again, longer time, repeatedly. Visash to measure, viskalash measure, but again, repeatedly. Sovash to clap, sovkalash to clap, to applaud. But the difference here might be sovash is and sovkalash is. Well, you're doing something over and over again. Then we had esht, another one that is not fully productive, just worth knowing. Shelash to break, to chop, sheleshtash to chop, maybe like in smaller pieces. Kolash to hear, koleshtash to listen. So it's like hearing, but over and over again. Lungash to rock, to sway, lungeshtash to stagger, to reel, like you're rocking back and forth over and over again. Shuash to sharpen, to whittle, shuashtash to sharpen, to whittle. Like I said, it's tricky sometimes to mark these distinctions in English, and I'm having the same problem when trying to explain their usage. So the ordering is a bit messy here. I'm sorry, because I would want to look at the other Aktionsart one here, but I'm stuck to what we have in the book here. Reflexive. Now we're looking at changes to the argument structure. Reflexive means like the difference between washing oneself. Suffix that we're calling, so to wash is transitive verb, can have an object. To wash oneself, well, the oneself is the object, so you can't have an object. But in Mari, we have reflexive derived words where they're just really, there cannot be an object. And the first one we looked at was alt. We've looked at this one several times already. Cross references are in the textbook, where we were talking about the various different aspects of meaning that it has. When it's attached to a stem, it can be reflexive. I washed myself, it can be passive. I was seen, it can be miscellaneous in transitive, like to close or to open transitive, and to open intransitive, like the window opened or so. Yeah, so kildash to connect, kildaltash to be connected, vozash to write, vozaltash to be written, but it could also be to inscribe oneself, to write oneself into a list or so. So it can also be reflexive depending on context. Pochash to open, pocheltash to be opened, to open intransitively. The distinction between alt and ilt, because sometimes we have ilt here, this happens on a lexeme by lexeme basis, and it's not fully predictable. Yeah. Mushkash to wash, mushkeltash to wash oneself. Okay, we're sticking to argument structure games before we go back to Aktionsart. Causative is now the exact opposite. We are adding one constituent to the mix. And first we had was KT, which was like from just very straightforward causative, to make somebody do something. Erash to become warm, erektash to warm something up. Onchash to look, onchiktash to show, to make somebody look at something. Shonash to think, shonektash to make somebody think. So also other things in this category would be like shochash to be born, shochuktash to give birth, etc. You are making somebody else do something. So we're back to D and D or T, which we have already seen as a factative derivation of suffix. I promised that it would be productive in some cases. Here we go. It is not by its default productive when attached to any verb or stem, but for sholash to boil, we have sholtash to boil, intransitive, transitive, purash to enter, to go in, purtash to enter, to bring in, to lead in. So in these functions, there's a small number of lexemes using small, but a number of important lexemes that use the suffix that you need to know. It is productive in combination with two derivational suffixes, the transitive suffixes ang and m that we were looking at. Whenever you can attach ang to something or m to something, you can attach a d to it. So the choice between these two in the unproductive usage is not predictable, but here it is predictable. It's always the. So lopkangash to become wider, lopkangdash to widen, viangash to become stronger, viangdash to strengthen, to make stronger. Nelemash to grow heavy, nelemdash to make heavier, sayamash to get better, to improve, sayamdash to make better, to improve. So any of the intransitive verbs you can create with these derivational suffixes, you can also make transitive. Dar and tar, this is a Turkic loan element only used in combination with a few words, but not just Turkic loan elements. You can also find in combination with some non-Turkic stems. But yeah, so we have, for example, yomash to become lost, yomdarash to lose something, chaplanash to enjoy fame, chaplandarash to glorify, kuanash to be happy, kuandarash to make happy. Shijash to feel, to sense, shishtarash to notify, to inform, umlash to understand, umiltarash to explain. Yeah, so there are some very important words using the stem, but I would not classify it as 100% productive. Momentary verbs, we're back to Aktionsart games. This is now denoting that you're doing something for a short time period. And here we have alt second conjugation, careful not to be confused with alt first conjugation, kanash to rest, kanaltash to rest, to relax, shonash to think, shonaltash to think, to consider, vuchash to wait, vuchaltash to wait a little. So the difference between vuchash and vuchaltash, it might be vuchash is if you're sitting on the railway station and waiting for your train to leave, which is in half an hour, and vuchaltash is you're walking through town with your friend is walking too quickly and you want to tell them, hey, hang on a moment, let me catch up. Then in that case, you'd say vuchalte, just wait a little, hang on, I'll be right there. So I just need to wait for one moment, momentary. Then widely used, but not quite as productive. Well, I'm actually not sure. This one's also pretty productive. Murash to sing, muralash to sing a little. Shogash to stand, shogalash to stand up. So here we've made it transformative in it, like turning the status verb of standing has become a transformative verb to start standing. Onchash to look, to see, onchalash to look, to have a glance. So yeah, that's it for verbal derivation for now. Words and words usage. We have a few points here. The first one is European countries. You see here a map of European countries. And just wanted to have one note that especially puristically inclined Maoris like to use the word Suomi for Finland. So the Finnish word for Finland in Maori, but I would say it's a relatively fringe phenomenon, but one should know it. Here you see an overview of the mostly Russian-derived names for European countries. One thing to keep in mind, if we have like a name like Polsha for Poland, the unstressed final A, which not corresponding to general Maori pronunciation rules, is reduced in inflection. So in Poland becomes Polszysto. And that is generally the case with country names and city names and whatnot start ending in like Poland is one here. Another would be like Vienna, Ukraine. You would want to reduce the yeah, or this is a conjunction, just worth a note because we sometimes find it also in mirrored usage, double usage when we are to say for either or, basically. Either you come or you don't. So the second ya, if we have two yas, the first one actually becomes the either and the second one becomes or. So who. If we use this one mirrored twice in a sentence, then it is some and others. Some do this, others do this. Some agree, some are for it, some are against. Vere is a postpositional element only used in combination with a few select stems, denoting then in places like in a place. Other vesvere is somewhere else in another place. Turle, different, turle vere in different places. Chula, everything, chula vere, everywhere. Shuko, many, shuko vere in many places. So vere, you cannot attach this to random things. You cannot say skol vere in school or anything like that. That would be nonsensical. but it is commonly used in combination with this small set of words. I'd actually be interested in a corpus linguistic survey like collocations with Verret. I'm sure you could find some interesting thing like a comprehensive overview of what exactly does precede Verret. Next point is a systematic overview of directional constructions. As we have already seen in Mari, if I have a squirrel jumping up the tree in Mari, the squirrel doesn't jumping up the sea. It doesn't jump up the tree. When it does this number, it jumping ascends, or it jumping climbs the tree. So we have these basically a very systematic system, nice, where the first element that is in the converbial form denotes the manner in which an activity was carried out, swimming, jumping, crawling, whatever. And the superordinate verb that is then can be inflected freely, that denotes the path up, so ascend, descend, enter, exit, etc. And here you see some usage examples. And as you might note in the second half down here, we not only do we have intransitive constructions of this type, like swimming leave, swimming out, swimming enter, swimming in, but also transitive ones. Shiren luktash, to dragging, like take out, basically to dragging, take out means to drag out, etc. But you might notice that for the transitive examples, the second verb in the pairing is also transitive, and in the intransitive ones, the second verb of the pairing was intransitive. So you can do this with both intransitive and transitive verbs, but you need to use different verbs in the second position. Here you have a more or less a systematic overview of which directionalities you would be marking with which verb in which in intransitive and transitive clauses, respectively. And it should be noted, though, that we have some pairings that are very commonly used that do not really fit into this system. Like tolan shuash is coming, arrive, used to arrive somewhere. This doesn't fit into the system. So as per usual, language is not obliged to be as systematic as we'd like it to be. So these it does not fit into the system. Auxiliary constructions, shogaltash, pushtash, shindash, 3 verbs meaning to put, to place. This we already mentioned these in the overview that we had in the last chapter. All 3 of these verbs are used in combination. Here we have examples with all 3 of them. All 3 of these verbs are used to mark a transformative telic action, and they're used in combination with transitive verbs to, through your action, change something in a sustainable way. Like shonash, to think, shonen pishtash, thinking place means to decide. Like your thinking is not just an idle action, it leads to a changing status. Your attention dash, loving place, falling in love. It's also not just like your attached to love does not denote a transformation. Your attention dash does. As regards the difference between these 3, remember the what I mentioned, Klaus Schönig's beautiful formulation of the verb's original meaning breaking through. Either it is just, they're just phraseological expressions that you have to learn as elements, that like to decide is shonen pishtash and to fall in love is yaraten shindash. It's just the way it is. But otherwise, in some cases, we can say shogaltash is to put the place in a standing position, pishtash is to put the place in a sitting position, and in a lying position, and shindash is to put the place in a sitting position, to set something. And if we want to look for a difference between these 3, in a systematic difference between the 3, it might be that this original, like the position that is encoded by the basic lexeme is still there in some shape or form. Finally, we also have optash in this chapter, which is to put, to place, but to lay several times. In its basic, like the basic semantics of this verb are already, it's already frequentative of sorts. It already denotes that you do something repeatedly. So when we use this in auxiliary constructions, in an auxiliary construction, it is also denoting that one does something repeatedly over a long period, etc. So it's actually quite quite distinct from the other three that we were just looking at. Like nice on the parentheses. Kören obdash is to beat somebody up, not just körash, not just beating somebody, but beating somebody repeatedly. Yeah, that brings us to the text for this chapter, which, like the text in the last chapter, pertains to Mari music, but now it pertains to a different kind of Mari music. Type of music called estrada, usually, which is just like stage music, which is a very well developed musical discipline among the Maoris. You've got a text introducing some of the stars of Mari Estrada. And then in the exercise section to this textbook, there's also a little clip pertaining to Mari El Radio channel that plays Estrada music day and night. That concludes this chapter, and so see you next in the grand revision.